Alright guys, let's go ahead and get started with some of our basic sketching techniques. So for this, all you need, like I said, is a blank piece of paper of some type and a pencil. And then at the end of it, for actually submitting the assignment, if you're using Cam Scanner, then you won't need to do this step. But if you're using Rocketbook, then you will need either a red pen or a red marker or something that you can make red marks with. And I'll show you that in just a minute. Although you guys should have all gone through the Rocketbook setup procedure during the first couple days of class. But anyway, let's see here. Let me open this up and we'll get started. I apologize, guys. My computer is insanely slow. It's slow enough that I actually purchased a new one that'll be here next Monday, because this is just insane trying to teach with a lag. Well, I mean, look at the lag that's happening. You can see I put my hand in front of the webcam, and then my document camera is like a good second and a half behind it. And that's not usually a problem. It's just... Anyway, enough about my issues. At least my computer issues at the moment. Let me add one thing. No, I don't want to do that. I want to click that button. And come on, little computer, don't die on me yet. Yes, yes, I understand. We're going to... I want to... Yep. Okay. Let's add a window capture to this. And that is the window capture I want. And we're going to crop in on just this. I guess I should have done this when we were on our break, but it didn't occur to me until just now that my descriptions that I'm following from should also be showing up. Okay, so we're going to look, like I said, at basic sketching techniques. And the first technique that is very important to know is how to actually create a line so that it's basically a straight line. And, well, here, let's see. So a sketch line is where we're going to start. And they're made with a series of short, overlapping strokes. Light construction lines are drawn first and then darkened to correct the weight. So that's what the description down here at the bottom is telling us. It says, first sketch a series of short lines and then darken them in to the desired weight. And so one bit of terminology here that we probably haven't run across yet is line weight. And that is essentially how thick the line is and how dark it is. So our first step is going to be creating a straight line across the top of our page, or at least a fairly straight line across the top of our page, using just the pencil in front of us and no straight edges. So I'm going to start here about, and it doesn't have to be perfect, yours doesn't have to match mine exactly, but we are attempting to end up in roughly the same place. So I've started off by putting a little dot right here, and it's about 3/8 of an inch down and a 3/8 of an inch over. And if you're not exactly there, that's fine as well. Like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect. So from this position, I'm going to come over about halfway across the page, and just eyeballing, I'm going to make another dot that is a little ways down, 3/8 of an inch down about. And that is my target. This is where I am going to sketch my lines to. So I'm going to start on this first dot. Now before you do this, watch my hand as I draw these lines. And watch the way that my wrist moves and the way that my whole arm moves as we do this. So, with sketching, one of the things that is very good is that you can rotate the paper in whichever direction is more comfortable for you. Once we start using actual drafting tools, your paper will be taped down essentially to the board. So I'm going to start here at my starting, and I'm going to make short stroked lines aiming for this point here. And you might not be able to see this, and I will darken this down real quick. Where is brightness? It's not Luma, it is... come on, where are you at? Expander, it's not noise suppression. Maybe it is. Whatever, let's see here. Is that it? Nope, that's not it. I don't want to duck it either. Filters, it's not that one. Is it Luma? I think Luma is... Yeah, it's not that one. Sorry. Be nice if things were just easy. Render, limit, image, mask, color key, color correction. Let's try that one. Ah, there we go. Contrasty. There. That should at least make it a little easier to see the lines. So I'm starting here at my beginning dot, and I'm dragging simple, short, lightly overlapping lines heading for my target. Now, you'll notice, if you can see this, that my lines are not, they're not perfect, they're not exactly a straight line, they aren't really connected to each other, and they're very light. And that is exactly what you're going for. So go ahead and attempt to do that. And then once you have that first line done, come back and press just a little bit harder. Still overlapping, but use those lines as a guide to create a darker line over the top. And you notice the more lines I have down, the longer each stroke I make is. Now this is because, or the reason this is, the reason that we are going through and being very deliberate about this is because intentionally, the more you do this, the more it becomes secondhand. Also, a lot of times when you're just plain sketching, you don't spend a whole lot of time intentionally making straight lines. Or if you do, they don't necessarily have to cover this much space. And yes, so I had a question about if you're left-handed, you can start on the other side as well, whichever is more comfortable for you. I'm kind of weird, like I can do things left-handed with my pencil, but it all ends up being backwards. So, like, I know some right-handed people who can't even hold a pencil in their left hand properly, or at least in the same way they do with the right. But, yeah, it's actually kind of a good thing I'm not left-handed, because then my hand would constantly be covering the camera, which would be a little irritating. When I'm done and have this whole thing completed, like I said, the video will be posted inside Lab 1. In addition to that, I will upload a completed version of this as a close-in picture, because that was another question that I had in there. Okay. So we talked about line thickness or line weight, and different types of lines are identified by that weight. Some lines have special meanings, and lines should maintain continuity from beginning to end. Sketching strokes should overlap for continuous solid lines, and that's basically what we were just doing in this place that we started. So if we look at this, and let me stretch it out so you can see it a little bit better. Here we go. So this is essentially a technical drawing, and it has a description of the different types of lines that are being used. So around the outside edge we have a border line. The line that goes from a dimension, that's what these red markers are, to the actual drawing that we're doing is called an extension line. The line that goes between the extension line is called the dimension line. We have a cutting plane line, which is this drawing right here at the top. Oh, it's not showing my cursor. That's kind of weird. Not sure why that is. Oh, there we go. So this drawing up here has basically some more detail, which is shown down here. This is called a section view. It's like if you had a birthday cake that is made up of a bunch of layers and you cut it directly in half, then you could look at it, and that's what this section AA view is right here. Then we have what's called a hidden line. In this example, it's still black, but in our actual practice, they will be blue. They're dashed lines that indicate something, a feature that would be covered by a solid surface. Then you have the visible line, or I tend to call those object lines. They're the actual hard edges of the shape. The center line, which is this green one, that is used specifically to note where the center of an object, or more usually a circle, is located. The diagonal lines inside of this are called section lines. It's they only really show up when something has been cut for a section view. And then again, you have the center line depicted right here. Now each one of these vary. And don't worry, you don't have to copy this down or remember it exactly. Once I get you your drafting workbooks, it will have a copy of this in it so that you can remember the names and the functions and what they look like. But this chart is a good reference for if you're confused when I tell you to draw a certain kind of line. Let's see here. I want to skip through all of these. Here we go. Alright, and we'll come back up to those later. Here is what we did just a few minutes ago, sketching horizontal lines. When I was doing sketching, I've never really saw the need to look at the differences between horizontal and vertical lines when sketching, simply because if I want to make a vertical line, I'll just turn my paper. But for some of you, it may be easier to draw vertically instead of horizontally across the page. So we're going to go ahead and do one next, and then you can figure out which one you're more comfortable with to utilize when we're sketching. So same deal, we're going to start in the same starting point that we did before. I'm going to come about halfway down the page and make another dot, because that's my target. And then same techniques, except this time, instead of locking my wrist and moving my whole arm to draw my straight line, I'm actually going to lock my wrist but use essentially my thumb to pull my fingers back and forth to make my straight lines. So starting, I'm going to come down in short strokes. Eventually I will have to reposition my hand. Continuing down to my target line. And then just like before, I'm going to come back and continue to make darker lines as we go until I get a line that represents what I want. Now, one thing that you might notice about the pencil that I'm using as opposed to a pencil that you're using is how light, even when I press really hard, how light my lines still are. That's because I'm using a specific type of graphite in this pencil that's made specifically for drafting. Or more accurately, it's made for the preliminary part of drafting. It has and those of you who've been through art before probably know what this means, but it has a 2H hardness. When you're talking about leads and graphites, then there is a. Is there an example of it in this presentation? It doesn't look like it. Essentially, drafting lead is, and actually all pencils are classified from H to B. H means the higher the number, the H number, the harder the lead is, and the lighter the line becomes. As you move in the other direction, from H9, I believe, is the hardest lead there typically is. Moving, so 9 through 1, or just H, is 1H. The lead gets softer and the lines get darker. After H, you have HB, which is basically the center point of the different types of lead, and then you start moving up in numbers on the B side. So starting with B, then B2, all the way up to B9. The further you move in that direction, again, the softer the lead becomes, and the more dark lines you can get. You can get almost a charcoal black by the time you get up to a B9. And actually, let me go grab, I'll be just a second. So this is less a technical drawing kit and more of a like an artistic sketch kit, but it does have the different types of leads that I was talking about. So this one's a 5H, this one's a 4, all the way over to an 8B, and you don't have to do anything right now, I just want to show you this. So if I was to pull out, let's see, this one should be a 2H. Here we go. And we're to make this line right here. You can see it's slightly darker right here, but it does match pretty well with the pencil that I was using. If I come a little lower and pull out, this should be an HB, I believe. That's just a B. HB, here we go. You can see the line below that. Darker still, even though I did kind of go back over it again. Pull out B2. And it may not be very visible on the camera as you're seeing it right now. So this one is a B4. Or rather a 4B. I kind of get them backwards. This one is a 6B. At that point, you can really see the difference. And if pull out an 8B, there we go. So it also depends on how sharp your leads are as well, in terms of how much surface area you get on here. So you'll be able to see this on the post when I actually add this to our assignment. So we're getting close on time here, so I'm going to do a couple more things before we wrap it up for this day's sketching. Let's see here. Alright, and this talks about doing angled lines. It has our 2 mark-off points. So basically everything that I was talking about, except in this case, it's talking about doing them at an angle. And then how you can rotate your paper to achieve the same results. Now, squares and rectangles require a little bit more thought into what it is that we're going to be drawing. So let's start off by doing this. Let's sketch an axis for layout. Essentially, here, let's go maybe about a quarter of the way across the page and a quarter of the way down. And I'm going to put a dot, and that dot is going to be the center of the axis I'm going to draw. And then I'm going to lightly create, doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be exactly symmetrical, but something that looks very similar to what I'm creating right now. A large plus shape, or the basis of a coordinate grid, if you're looking more in the direction of math for terminology. Once I've done that, using my best judgment for spacing, I'm going to put 4 tick marks equally spaced from the center along each arm of this. And what I mean by that is just a quick vertical line, and I'm going to try and keep the space between the center and that first line. I'm going to try and make it match the space between the first line and the second and the third. Again, if you don't get it exact, that's fine. 3, 4. Okay? And then I'm going to do my best to attempt to make all 4 arms have the same spaced hash marks. Two. Now, eventually, the more you sketch, the more second nature this becomes, and the easier it is to create a square or a rectangle without having to, in essence, draw the skeleton of what you're attempting to create on paper. So, for example, most of the time now, if I wanted to create a square, I don't have to actually go through and build the framework of this plus shape first. Again, that's not a perfect square, and you don't expect it to be. That's one of the perks of sketching. So here's what I would like you to do. On your second hash marks here, create a line that extends far enough left and right to cover the second hash marks out on your vertical lines, or your x-axis, if that's the way you term things. Do the same above and below your origin line. And then from the ends, connect them. So you should have, if not a perfect square, because, you know, that's not what we're really shooting for, but you should have a square that is obvious within the bounds of this target shape that we've created. And with 5 minutes remaining, that's about as much as we're going to do on this today. However, what I do want you to go ahead and turn in what you have completed. So, if you're using Rocketbook, remember, and that's what you need the red marking for, to color in the corners. It doesn't have to be solid, it just needs to be very obviously a red-like triangle on all 4 corners of the page. Okay, let's see here.
Is it okay if we use Cam Scanner?
Yes, that's fine. Just try and make it so that the watermark isn't over the drawing, which I think it's done
Alright.
better. Yeah, Cam Scanner is okay. It's just the advertisements have gotten very intrusive, and some parents they had a pretty massive data breach last summer, and some parents were less than thrilled that I wanted that app on their kids' phones. So that was the main reason for the switch. But anyway, once you have those corners created, let me drop this down. Let's add a window capture for the lonely screen. And the lonely screen is a nifty little app that I found that lets me AirPlay to my computer so you guys can see what's going on either my tablet or my phone. So anyway, ROCKET book. So I've opened. I don't want to take the survey. Thank you. Alright, so I've opened Rocketbook. I'm going to new scan. I have beacons selected. And I hover over my picture till it takes the picture. Now if I go in here, you can see the thing I just created. Go back, click next, and we're going to send it to my Rocketbook folder on the drive. I'm going to rename this Lab, or I think I called it Lab 01. 01, and then I'm going to add part 1 to it because we're going to finish this next time, and then click save. Once that is completed, it will be available in my Google Drive as a PDF so that it can be submitted through Canvas. I'm not sure why it did that. I had to go back and hit send again. But all right, after you guys are done with that, you are more than free to go ahead and call it a day. Thank you, and we'll see you guys on Thursday, I believe it is. Bye, guys.
Is this in the modules?
It will
Let me
be as
see
soon
here.
as I get it loaded. So the first part of the video before we started the demonstration will be in that Zoom recordings section, and then this part will be posted directly into the Lab 01. It's under Module 2 Sketching, which, come to think of it, I need to make sure is actually visible for you guys. It is
When
not.
will you want this in by?
Just have it in before next class.
Okay, cool.
I did have I just turned on Unit 2. I forgot to publish it, so you should be able to see all of this, including the PowerPoint that I was working from on the screen. Okay.
Alright, see you
See you guys.
Thursday.
See you. Stop recording.